After Jetman brought some much-needed new energy to Sentai, it was important that Toei and Bandai follow it up with something really iconic. They needed to prove that Jetman wasn't just a one-off fluke, and that they were committed to keeping this energy as they went forward with the series in the 90s. What followed was Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, a series that continued from the fresh ideas of Jetman and executed on it in a completely different way. It's a series that's in the years since been kind of taken for granted in my opinion. At least that seems to be the case in the Western Tokusatsu fanbase. So I'd like to talk to you about why it's really special and standout even after all these years. Just like last time, let's start by talking about design. This part's really easy because the design is such an unbelievable step up from what came before that it's honestly kind of hilarious. Zyuranger is the first truly out-and-out fantasy Sentai, with everything being based in some kind of magic or mysticism rather than the high-tech or militarized stuff that was Sentai's MO for a long time. Everything in this show's toy line has to do either with fantasy or dinosaurs, and everything is just super cohesive this time. The sidearm gun sword thing swings around in a really cool way and has these jagged teeth on it like a dinosaur's teeth, and the legendary weapons that the Zyurangers get are all just super good fantasy weapons. They all look really cool, and as silly as it is, the cannon combination for the weapons still kind of fits together in a fantastical way that just works for the series. The suits take a lot of stuff that came from before and refined it into a really nice elemental form. This isn't even holdover nostalgia from The Other Thing. It's just genuine appreciation for how good these designs are. The diamonds all over the suit are a really good abstract representation of the jagged teeth motif that's present on the weapons and Daijujin's test, and like every other dinosaur Sentai, the helmets are all real good, and advance my compliments about Jetman's helmets, giving personality to each member, and god, just don't even get me started on Dragon Ranger. That is the good shit. Mecha design in Super Sentai was quite literally never the same after this point. Up until 1992, everything was kind of on that G1 Transformers wave, whereas Daijujin from Zyuranger is more like Voltron. Though, side note, I hear some stuff here and there about the mecha designer for Zyuranger being related in some way to the design of Voltron, or Go-Line if you're spicy, and I'm willing to believe that because of the similarities, but also I can't verify it, so just take it with a grain of salt. This is the first time the mecha have been just animals that combine rather than animal-themed regular vehicles like you'd see in Jetman and stuff, and that Daijujin combination, mwah, wonderful. Just a gorgeous, iconic mech. There's a reason this thing has stuck around for so long, aside from The Other Thing, and Dragon Caesar. Dragon Caesar, which comes in later, is just one of my favorite mecha ever. It's literally if Godzilla was a mecha, and I love him so much. What a sweetie. Also, how could I forget about King Brachion? That's the real boss hog right there. So yeah, a lot of that's probably sounded obvious just because of how much of this is probably stuff that you already remember seeing around. And for that reason, though, I think it's important to reiterate just how great it is sometimes. Because I think Zyuranger is a series that in every respect just gets kind of taken for granted. People just assume that it's a baseline level of good without really examining why or how it's that good. And that absolutely goes for the actual show itself. Zyuranger has a reputation for being a standard, run-of-the-mill Sentai. A Sentai that's not all that special, but serves its purpose and does alright at its job, especially when put next to the series before and after it, Jetman and Dairanger. I'm here to put a stop to this madness. Zyuranger fucking slaps, and y'all must put some respect on its name, it's so good. Zyuranger is a show that learns all the lessons it needs to from Jetman. It knows to keep the plots interesting and moving, and to keep the villain and hero dynamics fun and interesting as well. It doesn't follow Jetman in every respect, though, because the Zyurangers don't actually really brush up on each other very often at all. They don't hate each other. They're a team displaced in time by 170 million years, and they're revived in the year 1992 by the wizard Barza, so that they can thwart the plans of the evil witch Bandora and her gang of absolute dipshits. Zyuranger has a really unique vibe compared to other Sentai just because of how focused it is on the idea of Sentai teams as friends to the community. Unlike Jetman, the Zyurangers aren't really concerned with personal vendettas and loss. They're purely protectors of their community and friends to everybody. A lot of episodes have assorted kids address the Zyurangers by name, and a lot of the more episodic episodes follow the Zyurangers helping kids out with their assorted problems and encounters with Bandora's monsters. You know those Heartwarming videos or photos of the cast of the Avengers or Justice League meeting kids in the hospital to cheer them up. This entire show is that. The Zyurangers are as follows. Geki, the Tyranno Ranger, is a kind and strong leader that's ultra compassionate. Goshi, the Mammoth Ranger, is the team's rock and Geki's right-hand man. He's usually the voice of reason. Dan, the Tricera Ranger, is hot-blooded and reckless, but he has a rock-solid sense of justice. Boy, the Tiger Ranger, is the young and naive one of the team, and he's also the source of a lot of comic relief. May, the Terror Ranger, is, well, the girl, but to give credit where credit's due, the show over time does do a really good job of characterizing her as more cunning and creative than the other Zyurangers in stressful situations. Some of her focus episodes are actually the most fun. These guys work wonderfully together, and their dynamic makes so many of these episodes go down easier than they would have otherwise. The Bandora gang is the best, though. Bandora's just a real asshole and just literally loves to make children cry and cause people to have bad days. She's different from Radagay in the way that she's more of a god of mischief, someone that just wants to fuck with people and eventually take over the world with her buddies. Her buddies, though, oh my god. Kleplikon makes monsters out of this clay, and he rules. Griforzer is the muscle, and he doesn't talk very much, and he rules. Lami is Griforzer's fucking wife, and that's hilarious and amazing, and she rules. And Totpat and Bookback are the best ever. They're the biggest dumbasses ever depicted on screen. They have the fucking Pop Team Epic dynamic going on, and they're such idiot assholes. I adore them so much. I would, no joke, watch an entire sitcom about the Bandora gang. I adore them so much. They made me laugh so much while I was watching this show. Also, Bandora's theme fucking rocks. Let's get on that real quick. Bandora Palace! 遠くに眺める地球青い真理のサファイアドラスコープ覗けばうじゃうじゃ汚いゴミの星だよ地球を汚しているのはバカな人類今に私の子分がドシャドシャ潰してマッシュポテトさソフトパッドブックバックグリファーダプリプリカラミ行くよドドラドラドドドラドラドドララドドララバンドラドドラドラドドラドラドドララドドララバンドラ The early episodes of Zyuranger have a lot of really nice highlights, and particularly the episodes introducing the Guardian Beasts and Daijujin are great, with the twist that this time, this mech is actually the show's version of God himself, and that the robot is fully sentient, and that manifests itself in some really cool ways later on. Another great early highlight is the episodes with the monkey tribe and the dinosaur eggs that they're sworn to protect. It's a fun struggle between the Zyurangers and Bandora's gang to try to gain possession of these eggs. After about 16 episodes, the show decides to ramp things up a bit by introducing the biggest change that Zyuranger brings to Sentai as a whole, that being the first recurring 6th team member. A legendary warrior known as Barai is awakened, and he's immediately pissed and starts going after the Zyurangers with murderous intent. Barai is the Dragon Ranger, and he commands the Guardian Beast Dragon Caesar. He also happens to be the brother of Geki, our very own Tyranno Ranger. This obviously shakes Geki as he doesn't want to fight his own brother, but Daijujin's like,
Geki, you gotta kill your fucking brother, he's dangerous.
And this is just a conflict for a few episodes. Bandora tries to get Barai to join her and her crew, but at the end of the day, Barai and Geki have a final showdown and they end up making up, and Barai joins the Zyurangers for real. The Barai arc is a really, really great arc, and it's where Zyuranger really shows its hand as a show that's every bit as good as Jetman when it comes to drama. This arc is also really damn long for a Sentai arc. It's like 6 or 7 parts, but it doesn't feel like it at all. I absolutely devoured it when watching to prepare for this video. Barai continues on as a Zyuranger for a lot of the series, but it comes at a serious cost. See, when he was imprisoned in that cave for all those years, he actually did die, but was revived with the powers of this being named Quatho, so now with the second life, Barai has a time limit. He can only be out of this timeless chamber for as long as his candle that represents his life burns, and when it burns all the way down and extinguishes, he dies. I can kind of see how this would be frustrating for some watching the show, but for me it was actually incredibly effective in making every one of Burai's appearances tense and instilling a real sense of dread throughout the series because of the time being shaved off of his life every week. After some time with this new dynamic, at around episode 30, the show steps it up again, with the arc centered around the monster Dora Franken. He's a really goofy-looking Frankenstein monster that's made out of this super clay. He first shows up at what seems to be a sillier episode centered around Dan trying to get a job for some extra walking around money, but it quickly spins into an arc where the Zyurangers have to deal with this undying badass as he turns into zombie Franken, and then this. And the end result is the introduction of King Brachion and the first usage of the 7-piece mech combo. The first of its kind for Sentai. It fucking slaps. Zyuranger really sneaks up on you. A lot of the standout arcs like Burai's introduction, the Dora Franken arc, and even the final arc all start out as super unassuming one-off episodes that end up spinning out into 3, 4, 7-part arcs. Hell, even the dinosaur eggs from an early 2-parter actually come back into play with the Burai arc and even a couple other episodes, and those eggs actually become super important to the final arc. It's really appropriate too, because I think I could definitely say that for the show in general. Zyuranger's got such a reputation for being a very by-the-numbers typical Sentai, but after having just watched it and having my fair share of Sentai under my belt, I think Zyuranger carves out a very interesting place for itself. It gives off the impression that it's by the numbers, but ends up more deep and involved the more you look into it and examine what it's doing. It's kind of a nutty show, and I really like its whole vibe. The heroes never really change over the course of the show. They're very static, but they work as great role model characters for the kids in each episode. And before anyone gets the chance to say otherwise, I just want to say right now that I think a lot of the kids in the show do a really great job with each of their parts. I hardly ever have a problem with kids' characters in shows like this, but I think that this show in particular, there are some episodes where I was really impressed with the kids in this thing. Geki kind of has an arc with Burai, but it's not really so much change, so much as affirmation of his character that he's able to go through something as shocking as a surprise brother and still keep it together enough not to have the team completely fall apart around him. Very unlike Ryu from the last show, though I really do like both Ryu and Geki quite a bit. As the show starts to wind down, so does Burai's candle, and this is where we get the arc centered around his death. Burai's death, much like Guy's before it, is one of the most widely spoiled things in the tokusatsu genre, but again, like Guy's death, I wasn't quite prepared for it when it came around. The execution here is really great. The circumstances surrounding his death, with him having this recurring dream about being taken away by death himself and seeing a child sitting in wait for his turn, is mysterious, and then when Burai meets said child and is indirectly responsible for the child nearly dying, oh my god, it's heart-wrenching. Goshi and Dan venture out to desperately find an elixir that'll give Burai another life, but they end up being just barely too late, and the elixir instead goes to the kid, and god, it's just so beautiful. The whole thing is probably corny, but it's tokusatsu, and it works, and it made me cry. Burai himself isn't super prominent in the show, but knowing what his death meant for the kid he befriended and what it means for Geki really makes the death matter, I think. Immediately after is one of my favorite episodes in the show, about Dragon Caesar being heartbroken about Burai's death, and the Zyurangers letting him know that he still has family, and that they can continue to work together to take down Bandora. It's touching, and it's where Geki first uses Burai's dragon armor against a monster, and I don't know, it just really blew me away. Zyuranger's final arc isn't the most groundbreaking or anything, but it's sort of unique in that it doesn't quite make a huge deal of itself. It's as huge and as loud as tokusatsu usually is, but in the grand scheme of things, it kind of seems low-key and confident in its own way that it doesn't have to be super gutsy and shocking. It starts off as kind of the inverse of the other arcs in the series, starting out pretty bombastic with the destruction of the Guardian Beasts and the appearance of Bandora's newly revived son Kai. It eventually kind of morphs into a simpler adventure story about the Zyurangers trying to save the Guardian Beasts so that they can ensure the dinosaur eggs from early on in the show hatch. Kai is really fascinating and smart as Zyuranger's final antagonist. The team is so centered around helping children that it really fits that their final test is to battle a child resurrected and controlled by Great Satan. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Along with Daijujin being God, the show's got Satan too. He's summoned a couple times by Bandora and killed right after, so it's not a huge deal, but, yeah, Satan is real, and he's in Sentai, and, he's floating head, and he's fucking, boy is he pissed. He just sits there and just goes, ah! Ah! Kai piloting a giant mech that looks like a really cool kid's toy is really the best imagery for this as well. They do away with Kai's big robot, and when they embark to Bandora's castle to do their final battle, they find Bandora crying over the death of her son, manipulated by the Great Satan, and in turn, she can't fight anymore. She still bears ill will, though, so the heroes then opt to imprison Bandora and her gang in a magic urn so that they can't hurt anyone anymore. In the urn, the gang hilariously immediately gets bored. But in a twist of fate, Griforza and Lamy actually had a child that they hid from the others because of Bandora's hatred for children. Bandora quickly takes a liking to the child. Maybe she can change after all. At the very end, the Zyurangers reunite with the local children to watch the dinosaur eggs hatch, and when they do, the Zyurangers entrust the baby dinosaurs to the children and depart for heaven. Their mission is done, and they have trust in humanity to do the right things and take care of each other by their own means. I think Zyuranger is a show about faith, and passing things on to those you love. The Zyurangers are born again onto this earth to deal with one specific problem. They could have handled it like, say, the Jetman, and been laser focused on their goal of going full force against Bandora at every turn, but pretty immediately it seems that the Zyurangers are more focused on bettering their immediate community, and that the Bandora thing will just resolve itself along the way. Sure, there's a touch of interpersonal conflict with the Burai thing, but Geki and his brother quickly resolve things and come together because what they have to do, what they are, is bigger than any bloodline or misguided revenge. Once Burai comes into the fold, he has to keep his distance because he knows that acting selfishly for his own happiness will lead to his quick death, and that will make everything harder on his brother and his friends. So he quickly falls into a big brother role, where he only jumps in when the Zyurangers desperately need him, and in his last appearance before the arc concerning his death, he imparts a lesson about how the team has to deal with tragedy when they come face to face with it. At the time, this was about a monster angry about her destroyed eggs that ended up making a deal with Bandora. Just a bit later on in the series, that lesson is about when Burai dies. Geki and his friends have to accept Burai's death, and when they do, Burai leaves them Dragon Caesar, the Zusoken, and his dragon armor. Burai leaves his brother and his friends with his faith and his will, preparing them the best that he can with the future that they'll have to face. At the end of the show, the Zyurangers are leaving this Earth, and in effect dying and leaving behind the new life of dinosaurs and their will for a peaceful world to the children of Earth, keeping faith that they'll take care of it. It's a beautiful ending for a Sentai series, and it's really representative of the show as a whole. It's just so gorgeous. The design, as well as the story, this thing is just wonderful, and it's very deserving of a fresh look from a lot of the people deep into the genre, as well as a viewing from first-timers. Zyuranger has a lot of love in its heart, and it's a perfect response to Jetman. Just like Jetman, Zyuranger was also really hugely successful. It still holds some kind of fan-favorite status to some people, and it's not just because of Power Rangers. Oh, phew. I did a really damn good job of not mentioning Power Rangers this entire time. Obviously, Zyuranger's legacy is also that of the Western adaptation, but I feel like over time, Power Rangers has kind of been reductive to Zyuranger, because despite being amazing without Power Rangers, its legacy is still so heavily tied to the reputation of a completely different and, in my opinion, lesser show. I really respect Power Rangers a lot for its landmark, diverse cast, and for spreading around tokusatsu in the West, but at the end of the day, I just really don't think it holds up in comparison to Zyuranger's storytelling. Regardless of the context, the image of the Zyurangers is forever burned into worldwide pop culture, and that definitely counts for something. I just think that the origin of that image is captivating on its own, and deserves a lot more love than it gets. I think Zyuranger gets taken for granted, and that's incredibly unfortunate. Maybe, in an incredibly metatextual sense, that's something else Zyuranger has up its sleeve. Zyuranger is something that would be just as good, if not better off on its own. But it was passed on out of context for people in other places to reinterpret and share with each other. Maybe its central point is diluted now, but at least more people like me, got to know this genre through that little sacrifice. I don't know, probably reading too far into it, but that'd be pretty in character for Zyuranger, though. Boom! Another one in the fucking can. Oh, it's Explode When Defeated. We did a 3rd episode. Hell yeah. How'd you like it? Let me know. I don't know why I'm doing this whole cocky thing. As you saw earlier with the Ryu Soldier scan video, I'm kind of playing around with what I could possibly do in between these big episodes. I don't know that I'm gonna do stuff like that all the time. I'm kind of thinking of a lot of stuff. I think the perfect version of that kind of video, like with the toy scan stuff, is to possibly start doing live streams, like whenever like information like that comes out. I think that would be pretty fun to do a live stream and talk with people about it live, but I'm not really in the position right now to be able to do live streams at the moment, so maybe that's just an idea for another day. But yeah, hope you like this video. I really love Zyuranger. I think it's awesome. And I have some ideas of where to go, of what to talk about next. Definitely not going to be another Sentai. Not going to do 3 in a row. But it's another show. I'm thinking about it. But yeah. So you know, leave comments, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, anti-laser, whatever. Do what the hell you want. Whatever. I don't care. I'm so disaffected by what you have to do now. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm like halfway like coming in and out of this act, and it's really dumb. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you later on the next video. Goodbye.